Hi there, this is Travis Shaw, Director of Education for the Virginia Piedmont Heritage Area. I'm here in Leesburg today at the Loudoun Museum with my good friend, Executive Director Joe Rizzo. And we're looking back on an event that occurred this day, August 9th, back in 1825. I think it's safe to say it was probably the biggest party Leesburg has ever seen. And that is a party to celebrate the arrival of this man, the Marquis de Lafayette. Now, of course, we know about his role in the American Revolution. He comes to the United States as a teenager, offers his services to the Continental Army, and very quickly he's going to become one of George Washington's most trusted subordinates, almost a surrogate son to Washington. He becomes a major part of what's known as Washington's military family. Those guys like Alexander Hamilton, Tench Tillman, John Lawrence. What a lot of people don't know, though, is that several decades later, Lafayette is going to return to the United States, and he is basically going to be the biggest rock star of his day. He's going to spend almost 2 years traveling to every state in the nation, basically celebrating the new republic, celebrating his role during the American Revolution, kind of a farewell to that revolutionary generation. And he is going to come here to Loudoun County. Now, his first stop here in Loudoun is not Leesburg. Where is he going to start out?
Right, and he's about a year into his basic journey throughout the United States. And technically, at least as the current president, John Quincy Adams, says, he's not serving as the nation's guest for the first part of his trip. He's just a resident going with the president to visit their friend and former president, James Monroe, who's in Oak Hill, just south of Leesburg. So the first part of their trip is the first few days is over in Oak Hill area visiting again former President James Monroe.
Right, so you've got Lafayette, you've got former president, also Revolutionary War veteran James Monroe, veteran of the 3rd Virginia Regiment. You've got John Marshall is there, Supreme Court Chief Justice, and the current president John Quincy Adams. So it's quite a who's who of the early republic gathering at Oak Hill just south of Leesburg. Now they're going to head to Leesburg after departing Oak Hill. What's the reception here like when they get here?
Yeah, even though the trip has a kind of a private issue where he wants to see his old friend from the Revolution, James Monroe, the town of Leesburg knows he's coming and they have a plan and they have a whole committee ready to go to greet him. So the entourage comes up, they're greeted just outside of downtown Leesburg by the town council and by some Revolutionary War veterans, and then they are escorted into downtown where there's national salutes and people lining the streets to see the nation's guest, Lafayette. And their first stop is at Osborne's Tavern. And the neat thing about downtown Leesburg is that it's still very similar to it was then in terms of the layout and some of the exact homes. So you can really go through Lafayette's visit, starting with Osborne's Tavern.
Now, Osborne's Tavern is currently, it's right over, not far from here on Loudoun Street, and it's Blue Ridge Title. It's a private business today, big stone building you can see kind of near the intersection of Loudoun and King Street. But one of the first stops, and I understand there's some graffiti inside that may date to Lafayette's visit that's up in there. But you said you've got the council coming out, you've got local militia firing salutes, the girls of the Female Academy come out to greet Lafayette, and then they all gather on the courthouse for what I understand is a lot of toasts. A lot of drinking is involved with this visit.
A lot of toasts, and the committee that plans the event certainly wanted to play up the festive nature of this in a way to celebrate Leesburg, Lafayette, and former President James Monroe and John Quincy Adams. So after they do refreshments and a toast at Osborne's, they do basically take a carriage ride through downtown Leesburg, so people would come out to see them, can line the streets and see them as they pass by. But you're right, they do end up in front of the courthouse, where they do offer them 50 toasts to Lafayette, to the Revolution, to Lafayette again in different variations to him and the Revolution, but to some local politicians as well. They really make this a national and local celebration, and a way in which to remember the American Revolution and really use it as a moment of pride to show what came from the Revolution.
Right, and not just local and national issues, but also international. I was surprised reading the toast. There's a lot of toast to kind of the current events of the day, what's going on in South America, with the movements for independence there. So there's a lot going on in this visit. And as I said, 50 toasts was probably quite a party. We know that thousands of people, not just from Leesburg, but from the surrounding countryside, from all over Loudoun County, are coming out to get a glimpse at the hero of two worlds. You know, this person who was such an integral role in the American Revolution, in the French Revolution, kind of seen as an international figure of liberty. And as I said, kind of a farewell tour. You know, the revolutionary generation by the 1820s is dying out, getting older. So kind of one of the last connections to that period. Now, what happens after they leave Leesburg? Where are they headed?
And after they go back, they're heading back toward D.C. They do, as people traveling in D.C., have some issues. Their carriage does run into an issue with one of the horses carrying it, so it does delay them a day, but they do also go to Belmont and Ashburn on the last leg of the trip before making it back to D.C. And this is really one of the last trips that Lafayette is going to make on this year-and-a-half visit to the United States. He will be going back to the Warrenton area in Virginia again, still to come in his trips, but this is kind of the last leg of his journey.
Right, you know, he's literally visited every single state in the nation, not just the 13 colonies that existed when he was last here in the 1770s and 1780s, but, you know, he's going out to the frontier. It's really been an incredible journey, very well documented journey. We know one of his secretaries keeps a journal of all the places they visit. He does make a remark about the ladies of Leesburg in his journal.
It's really the only thing that he mentions about Leesburg, to be honest. When you read through the diary that he keeps, he doesn't mention much about Lafayette's visit, at least in the downtown Leesburg portion of it. But he does talk about the Ladies' Female Academy, which greet him. Calls, you know, interesting, which is a common adjective he uses to describe ladies. So that was really the most noteworthy thing with the ladies of Leesburg on this visit.
Now, we're standing here at the Loudoun Museum in Leesburg in the middle of your new exhibit about the early Republic period, kind of the first few decades of the 19th century on both a local and national scale. Can you tell us a little bit about the exhibit here?
Yeah, this new exhibit looks at a period that somewhat gets glossed over between the Revolution and the Civil War, but in the first couple of decades of the 1800s, it's called the Fragile Republic, and I think for good reason, this exhibit, because there is a lot of anxiety over the growth of the United States from a geographic standpoint, from an industrial one, and you see Loudoun County really begin to take shape in terms of population, mills like Aldi Mill and others that are being created during this period.
Industrialization.
So you see the growth of Loudoun, and you start to see really some concerns over a two-party system which is forming, but then also concerns over what having political parties will mean going forward. But we end the exhibit looking at Lafayette's visit to Leesburg, and it is kind of another moment to kind of come together, celebrate the American Revolution, a dying off generation at this point, and use Lafayette to show the progress that has been made, and kind of a unifying figure for an incredibly divisive period between Federalists and the Republicans nationally.
Great. So if folks want to come and see this exhibit, how can they do it?
Yeah, we are open Friday through Sunday, 10 to 4. We are always free admission, so come on by to see this one. We still have our Vintage Pursuits wine exhibit on display and our Civil War in Loudoun exhibit as well. So definitely come by any weekend. We'll be here.
All right, great. Thank you so much for joining me today, Joe.
Absolutely.
It's always a pleasure to come here to the Loudoun Museum. Really encourage you guys to come out and see this exhibit as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll probably be making another stop here in Leesburg a little bit later on as we talk about Lafayette's visit in August of 1825. Thanks for joining us.